You will hear it said when the topic of the common cold comes up that scientists have not found a cure for the common cold, an infection which incidentally afflicts pretty much every human being on the face of the earth every year. And I submit to you that this idea that there's no cure for the common cold is a myth. It is in fact false. And here's why. We say that there's no cure for cancer, and that's a fairly true statement. But remember, scientists don't know precisely what causes cancer. By contrast, we know specifically what causes the common cold. Now, by the same token, we say that there are cures for diseases like polio and other diseases for which scientists have formulated effective vaccines. By an effective vaccine, I mean a vaccine that is 90% or greater in its effectiveness. And the vaccines work in some complex ways, but the upshot is that they prevent your body from contracting the infection in question. They are preventative cures. And if we think about cures in this way, as preventative measures with a 90% or greater effectiveness rate, then there is a cure for the common cold. And it is a two-step cure that you can begin to follow right now to prevent acquiring a cold this cold and flu season. You don't have to go to the doctor for it, and you don't have to spend a lot of money on medications, etc. To understand just why these two steps will be 90% or greater in their effectiveness at preventing a common cold, we need to understand just how a common cold is contracted. And you will hear some myths in this regard as well. You will hear, for example, that you can get the common cold by through the mouth, by putting a contaminated object in your mouth. You will hear that you can get it through breathing in contaminated air, that it's an airborne thing that you can breathe in. You will hear that you can get it by touching your eyes, and that it flows down through the tear ducts after you touch your eyes. These are essentially myths, and at most account for so small a minority of instances that they shouldn't really be attended to as main causes of the cold. The primary way in which a common cold is contracted is as follows. First, the virus is acquired on the hands. We get it on our hands, either through touching someone who has the virus on them or touching a contaminated keyboard. There are various and sundry ways that we can get this virus on our hands. But it is totally inactive on our hands. It can do no harm on our hands. The common cold is often called the rhinovirus, which is actually a portion of the viruses, a substantial portion of the viruses we categorize as common cold viruses. It accounts for about 80% of the viruses. But as the term rhinovirus suggests, this is a virus of the nose. And so the virus on your hands has to get to your nose. And so this leads to the first step in my two-step cure for the common cold. And the first step is stop picking your nose. Stop putting fingers, knuckles, whatever you put associated with your hand into your nose. Stop doing it. Stop putting your bare hands and fingers into your nose or around your nose. Now, the other way of dealing with this is to try to keep your hands completely clean and virus-free all day long, every minute of the day. But that's pretty much impossible. A much more plausible and workable way to do this is just to stop touching your nose. Clean your hands too. And don't rub your eyes a lot either. But stop, certainly, touching your nose and putting fingers into your nose. It's going to be fairly difficult to do this, in fact. I mean, this is something of a cherished human activity, particularly in the cold flu season. The fingers are constantly creeping up into the nose, and we're thinking about other things, and it just happens. Well, be mindful, stop doing it, and this will go a long way toward preventing the common cold, because again, the viruses that are on your hands have to get into your nose, and in fact have to get fairly far into your nose in order to get a cold. So, stop picking your nose, quite simply. There is a second step. Because, we pick our nose for a reason, and it's a legitimate reason. It's to clean our noses out, and we need to clean our noses out, particularly during the cold flu season. And so the second step is clean your nose, your nasal passages, and your sinuses. The only question is how. Picking it with bare hands won't clean it. It will, in fact, contaminate it. So how do you clean your nasal passageways and your sinuses in a safe way so as to prevent the common cold? This in itself is a kind of two-step process. The first thing you'll want to do is spray either water or some kind of saline spray into your nose gently. You don't have to snort in while you're doing it or forcefully sniff in while you're doing it. Just spray the saline into your nose. And the reason why I say don't snort is because, as I said before, the virus needs to get fairly far into your nasal passageways in order to get to what's called the adenoid area, where it will attach to cells and start creating the cold symptoms. And this means that, the snorting in, the sniffing in forcefully that so many of us do, is counterproductive if you have a virus in the entryway to your nasal passageways. That can result in you getting a cold where you might have prevented it. It might have just stayed in the entryways. Now, the cilia will result in some movement, and by itself will move a virus from the entryways up through your nose just by the force of breathing. But don't exacerbate that process by snorting in and whatnot. No snorting in, whether you're doing it with saline spray or just at any time during the day. You should not be snorting forcefully in. So spray the water or saline spray, let it sit for a few seconds, and then take tissues and blow it out. That should be the main action of cleaning, not sucking in, but blowing out. So, and I would add to this second step of cleaning your nasal passageways and your sinuses that water is a great remedy. It's a miraculous remedy in this regard. It's been shown, for example, that simply gargling with water can prevent colds. So water is and saline is also good. Saline spray are two great things to clean your nasal passageways and sinuses with in a very safe way. Go ahead and disinfect the nozzle of the saline spray after you've used it, of course. But with these two steps, stop picking and touching your nose and start cleaning your nose in a safe and sanitary way, which doesn't involve lots of snorting in. And drink lots of water. The water is part of the cleaning. It's part of the second step. Drink lots of water, spray the water in, gargle with it. It really is a fantastic remedy, just H2O. And if you follow those two steps, you will not get a common cold this cold and flu season. That's my promise to you, and I sincerely hope that you do not get a common cold, whether or not you follow these 2 steps. And I send you my best wishes in avoiding all seasonal illnesses. Thanks. Talk soon.